Okay, so we have the pleasure today to have with us Stefan Mundlos. He studied medicine before his PhD that he did in the University of Heidelberg. Thereafter, he was a research fellow at the Murdoch Institute in Melbourne, Australia, followed by a postdoctoral period in Harvard in Boston. After that, he returned to Germany, where he received his habilitation, and in Heidelberg, he was in 1999. He was nominated for a professorship in human genetics. In 2000, he moved to Berlin, where he is currently the director of the Institute for Medical and Human Genetics at the Charité and group leader of the research group Development and Disease at the Max Planck Institute for Molecular Genetics. So, Stefan, it's great to meet you, and thank you so much for your time to answer our questions. Can you tell us in summary the focus of your research?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. One little thing that I would like to add to the CV that you just mentioned is that I actually did a specialization in pediatrics. So I spent about 5 years or so actually in the clinic doing pediatrics, and that was before we went to Australia and then also to the US. Yeah, so it actually all started with a very clinical background, one has to say.
Very interesting. Yeah. And so that will give you a hint of what you're doing now, right?
And that also has to do with the research interest, because that's actually how the things also started. Because I was working there in a ward with very sick young children, with newborns, and many of them obviously had some sort of genetic disease, but at the time one had no idea what this was. It was just sort of starting, very, very slowly starting, that you would learn what these, all these diseases are. And that's still sort of my research focus, is to try to understand how the genome controls phenotype, first of all. And that can, what I originally did was mainly looking in terms of disease, but then more recently also in evolution.
And how did you discover that you wanted to do research?
I think that was actually happened, I started studying medicine in Göttingen. And Göttingen had an exchange program to the University of California. And then I applied to spend a year in California. And there I worked in a lab for something totally different and absolutely non-molecular. But that fascinated me, and I said, yeah, this is what I want to do and continue doing. And I think this is basically where it all started, and where I also met my first mentor, I would say, who really had a great influence on me.
It's very cool that experience will take you out of the box and show you another world.
Exactly, yeah.
And during your training, you were in different institutions, such as in institutes and different countries. How did it influence you as a person and as a professional?
It had a great influence. I mean, my first influence was when I was in the US, still as a student. Actually, a long time ago. But it was coming from University of Göttingen in northern Germany, going to Southern California. It was just worlds apart, and was really felt fantastic, and that has influenced me a lot. And then the second one was in Australia, but then also mainly in Boston at the Harvard University. That really had a major impact on my thinking on how to address research problems and all this. So Boston and Harvard had I think the most important impact on the things that I did thereafter.
And you have highlighted now your work. You are the director of the hospital, and you are the head of the research lab. How do you link those two demands, because it's very different, and how do they complement each other?
Yeah, so the hospital is actually an institute for human genetics, right? So what do human geneticists do in the hospital setting? We do a lot of diagnostics. So we diagnose genetic and rare diseases. So again, when you have this, someone who's sick and disease, where does this come from? That I think fits very nicely and complements to the things that I do and did in the Planck Institute, because there it was more like, okay, we have a defect and now we want to know how does it work. So how do we really produce it? And you have the genomic variant, but that doesn't tell you how all this happens in development. Right? So how does it happen in development? You have to go back at the early developmental stage when this actually happens and the mutation causes the problem. And, it's a great pleasure for me. And, I think it's something super important that I very much enjoy. And I think it also stems back to my own experience and these experience that I made at several stations of my life and career. There are several people that really supported me and that gave me the opportunity to work with them, or at least in that direction, and that I felt extremely important. It's something that I also would like to give back to people and help them to establish their own things, their own career, and I very much enjoyed that.
As the last question, what would be the problem that you would like to answer during your career? What would be you have one or two questions that you would like to?
I don't know if I can answer that question during my lasting career. That may not be long enough for that, but but what really interests me is basically what I mentioned at the beginning, is how you get from sequence to phenotype. And we've learned so much about looking at genes and looking at mutations and all that, but about everything that's non-coding and the regulation, we still know very little. And to learn a bit how that works, how you can change the sequence and by that produce something else, a different phenotype, some sort of attribution, something else, that I think would be cool to at least to start to get a glimpse of how that works. Yeah.
Very, very interesting question to ask. A lot of work to do. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your questions.